Hello, my name is Abhishek Chaudhary, and this is my digital story on MAL, Mobile Assisted Language Learning. So, what is MAL? MAL is using mobile technology to augment language learning that enables out of classroom learning. Typically, it requires a mobile device such as a phone or a tablet, and in some cases, an internet connection. MAL can employ gamification, such as levels and skill points, to make learning more fun. And typically, MAL is convenient and on the go. Now, what this all contributes to is allowing people to learn a language outside of the classroom, whenever and wherever they want. This is great for people who are out of school or don't have the means to go to school to learn a language. And on the bottom, we have various examples of MAL. So we have Duolingo, Babbel, Anki, and Google Translate. So here are some screenshots of examples. On the left, we have Babbel, and on the right, we have Memrise. In the Babbel example, this is a pretty standard flashcard-esque vocabulary drill. And on the right, we have a stroke order tutorial on the Japanese character for noodles. Before I get into the findings, I want to talk about the process and the research. So here we have a spreadsheet slash matrix of where basically the information sources or avenues are listed as rows, and the purpose of these avenues are listed as columns. Now, as this is an academic assignment, most of my sources were academic, which is why there's a focus on Rutgers Quick Search and Google Scholar. Google Scholar was great for finding sources, but it's pretty bad for actually getting the PDF for these sources, as most of these PDFs are behind a paywall of some sort. This is where I use Rutgers Quick Search to use my NID to get around these paywalls. Another important feature of the research was research ideas. Basically, I didn't limit my search to just Rutgers. I went to friends and social media to get ideas of what to look for. What are the subtopics? Like, what are some themes I should pay attention to? Now, for social media specifically, I used memes. I find memes great for expressing sentiment on a particular topic. I use Duolingo memes in particular because Duolingo is very popular, and also Duolingo memes are very funny. Lastly, I use Google and Bing to find contemporary sources and other informal sources, such as editorials and testimonies from the New York Times and the Atlantic. Here I have a screenshot of translation exercises from Duolingo. On the left, it says, "You have an important duck," and on the right, it says, "I'm eating bread and crying on the floor." Needless to say, these are rather bizarre things to be saying, to be teaching as well. And basically, it makes me question, is this type of learning effective? Is this meaningful? And is this a possible limitation of MAL? So, for brevity's sake, I've omitted some of the findings in this digital story, so I will only talk about three main topics. So I'm going to talk about the good aspects of MAL. As I said before, MAL is convenient and on the go. I don't think I have to reiterate all that stuff here, so I'm just going to give some examples of how great it is. So let's say you're waiting at the doctor's office or waiting at the DMV. You can use MAL basically to turn your downtime into productive time. A second aspect is MAL enables collaborative peer-to-peer learning, so students can use this to help each other understand the meanings and improve the speech and other skills. So in Targat and Karabakh in 2016, the researchers had students record an audio message, post it to a WhatsApp chat room, and they had to give each other feedback. This was a social learning that helped students really negotiate the meanings of words and improve their various skill sets in this language. Third, MAL is fun. Like, it's fun on a bun. And Burns et al. 2016, the researchers made an app based off a murder mystery. And so users were paired in groups of three, and they had to communicate in the target language to solve this murder mystery. It was not only was it collaborative, but it was fun. Lastly, MAL has enabled the education of fictional language like Klingon from Star Trek. And with the good comes the bad. The digital divide is ever present when it comes to technology, and in this case, the digital divide prevents those with internet access or mobile phones from partaking. So in areas where internet access is sparse, such as rural areas, or mobile phones are expensive, unfortunately these groups cannot benefit from MAL. A second negative is that learning methods do not resemble real-life conversation. In the Atlantic article, How to Almost Learn Italian, the author discusses how they use the app for a while to learn Italian through the multiple choice and the drag and drop type exercises. However, when they went to Italy, the author found that these exercises did not contribute to a working knowledge of the language because they couldn't speak in Italian in the actual conversation. So it really highlights how these methods, such as multiple choice and drag and drop, they don't actually contribute to the working knowledge of a language that is required. Sometimes explanations are poor in MAL. In 500 Days of Duolingo from the NY Times, the author discusses Japanese particles. For those who don't know, Japanese particles are grammar mechanisms that indicate what's happening in a sentence and what should be paid attention to. And one of these examples is de. As the author states, Duolingo just drops these particles on the user without much explanation. This is rather unfortunate because particles are very important in Japanese, and it requires a thorough and in-depth explanation for what they do because one particle can mean multiple things. Lastly, MAL is not an end-all be-all. It is not enough to learn to use one app to learn a language. It doesn't guarantee you language fluency. It only teaches you the basics. In the same New York Times article, the author gives an example of how someone who was working in banking regulation would have to use some other form of app or language aid and to understand the vocabulary for his own occupation or her own occupation. So MAL does not one MAL does not help does not lead to language fluency. Now, an important aspect of the research was to understand how MAL interacts with teachers. This is an important question because MAL and teachers are essentially doing the same thing, i.e. teaching a language. So basically, MAL has affected teacher roles in two ways, either by teachers integrate MAL into the language curriculum as an assistive or enhancement measure, or they become guides and advisors. So as guides and advisors, as stated in Morrison and Navarro in 2012, although students have the ability, like technologically speaking, to teach themselves, they don't have the cognitive ability to teach themselves. They don't know the skills that are required to make for self-effective learning. So guides are helping students become efficient, helping them find resources, helping them make decisions about which resources are the best for that student or that learner. Third, teachers find lack of institutional support more of a threat than MAL. So lack of funding, poor lack of equipment, lack of textbooks. So basically, the integration of MAL plays into this because it allows teachers to circumvent these issues. By leveraging the usage of MAL, they can basically have surrogates for these poor funding, poor missing equipment, or lack of textbooks. So it's great for that purpose. Finally, according to the study above, older teachers may find newer technology daunting. They may feel clumsy when using it, and they may not use it to its full potential. Basically, older teachers may have difficulty in keeping up with new technologies. This affects the ease of integration. It may suggest that not all teachers would have the rosy view of MAL. So it should suggest that teachers are not a monolith based off how age may present difficulties in keeping up with the new technologies. So that is my digital story, and I will conclude with the outline for my final paper. So basically, my question that I want to ask and also answer is, what does MAL mean for the future of language learning, and will it replace teachers? The way I go about this is I ask what is MAL, I discuss what MAL is, then I discuss the various types of MAL, like the implementations and manifestations. Then I talk about the good and the bad and the stakeholder roles, as I have done here, but in more depth. And I talk about the stakeholder perceptions between students and teachers. And it's not as simple as one would expect. Students and teachers have a very mixed view of MAL. Like, they both would see the positives and they also see the negatives. And in conclusion, I answer the question and I say, no, MAL will not replace teachers. The future is most likely one of integration and enhancement. So basically, this is not a story about replacing teachers. This is a story about students and teachers finding new stances in this new dynamic and ecosystem that MAL has enabled. That concludes my digital story, and I hope you enjoyed it.